How's it going, everyone? It is Andre Williams, and over here we talk stocks and we focus on one thing. Always protect your profits. And today we're going to be talking about Lucid, SOFI, NFLX, and POLESTAR. NFLX being the new addition, they do have earnings that's going to be coming out tomorrow in the after hours. And many people are asking me, hey, what are your thoughts on the chart? And also what kind of a potential move it can make. So I will be sharing my thoughts on that. If you're new to this channel, I just want to let you know we have timestamps down below inside of the description. And after we take a look at all of the charts and all of the short interest information, we also do a final recap for each of those. So let's get into those right now. So we're going to take a look at the chart for Lucid. Let's see how it performed on the day. So it ended up closing at $19.96, being up 1.42%. On the low, it tested $19.86, and then on the high, testing $21.08. So when we take a look at the volume stats on the day, you can see we traded at 17.206 million shares, and the average volume over 10 trading days is at 15.944 million shares. So we had above average volume, and of course we saw some strength in the stock. Now when we take a look at our chart, which is a 30-minute chart, here's one of the things I want to bring to your attention. We are seeing a continuation of higher lows. So you can see back here on July the 12th we were at 1827, and then you can see further up on the 13th we got to 1866, and then as we take a look here right here on the 14th, it was at 1896, and then a higher low here at 1924, and most recently having this higher low right at $19.86. So Lucid is on a strong uptrend. Another thing we need to look at, we ended up seeing a high at $21.08. Remember, I was looking for us to have that break above 2061, and that's exactly what we got. So as far as resistance is concerned, we have to keep an eye on this 2108 level. Let's actually draw a line there. So if we end up revisiting this area and we can break above it, you guys know I want to see Lucid being able to get to 2250, because that could really turn things around. As far as what we tested on the low, it was at 1986. So this is not too bad whatsoever. So if we have the opportunity to test back into the $20 range going into tomorrow, that would be a good look for the stock. And what you want to see is a break above $20.25 so we can have a retest at 2061. But overall, Lucid is on quite the strong uptrend. Let's see if that can continue. So we're going to take a look at the recent institutional ownership and short interest information for Lucid. So scrolling down on the page, green rows indicate new positions while red rows indicate closed positions. So we can see we have two closed filings from Northcrest, and we also have from Equitech. We have Johnson Midwest Financial LLC that purchased 239 shares, and we have PSI Advisors LLC that purchased 830 shares, and Baldwin Brothers Inc. that purchased 500 shares. Now, when we take a look at the short interest, the off-exchange short volume ratios are at 65.92%, and then for the off-exchange short volume, it is just over 3.61 million shares. Scrolling down on the page, the short shares availabilities at 350,000, updated 7 minutes ago, and then for the short borrow fee rate, it is at 14.11%. When we take a look at the history of the short volume, we can see for the close of the 14th, it was at 57.87. And then for the close of the 15th being at 65.92. And then when we take a look at the short interest percentage of the float being at 23.39%, Lucid does continue to have short squeeze potential. So we're going to take a look at the chart for POLESTAR. Let's see how it performed on the day. So it ended up closing at $9.66, being down 4.36%. On the low, it tested $9.53, and then on the high, testing $10.50. When we take a look at the volume stats on the day, you can see we traded at 2.893 million shares, and the average volume over 10 trading days is at 2.688 million shares. So we can see we did have above average volume on the day, and we had a pullback in the stock. Now, when we take a look at our chart, which is a 30-minute chart, here's what I want to point out to you guys. Remember when we were talking about support at $9.53? You can see right here that it's highlighted. We actually ended up retesting that area again, and we ended up closing at $9.66. $9.56. So why is this important? If we decide to actually break through this level at $9.53, that's where Polestar can start coming down to $9.33, and further selling can send it right back down to $9. So you want to add that to your homework if you haven't done so already. I also talked about if we ever broke through the $10 level, we would have a strong sell-off, and again, that's exactly what happened. But the fact that we were able to see a high at $10.50 was definitely really good, but we wanted to see it get above $10.62 because we know if it got above $10.62, then there's a strong likelihood it would make that test going to $11. And currently where it's trading now, it's in that range of $9.53 and $10, so it's going to have to make a recovery and at least get to $10 and see if it can hold support right here at the 200 EMA at $10.05. So if the market decides to continue to sell off, we'll see continued weakness, but if we end up having a recovery, that's where I want to see it make that move back to the upside. So we're going to take a look at the recent institutional ownership and short interest information for Polestar. So scrolling down on the page, green rows indicate new positions while red rows indicate closed positions. So when we take a look at the recent filings, we have PSI Advisors LLC that purchased 100 shares, and that's what we have for the 18th. Now when we take a look at the short interest, the off-exchange short volume ratio is at 54.26%, and then for the off-exchange short volume, it is at 495,150 shares. Scrolling down on the page, the short shares availability is at 6,000, updated 9 minutes ago. And then for the short ball-view rate, it is at 116.56%. When we take a look at the history of the short volume, we can see for the close of the 14th, it was at 43.56. And then for the close of the 15th, being at 54.26. So it has gone up a bit, but with the data we have in front of us, it looks like Polestar does continue to have short squeeze potential. So we're going to take a look at the chart for SOFI. Let's see how it performed on the day. So it ended up closing at $6.35, being up 0.95%. On the low, it tested $6.31, and then on the high, testing $6.60. When we take a look at the volume stats on the day, you can see we traded at 19.527 million shares, and the average volume over 10 trading days is at 22.924 million shares. So you can see we have below average volume on the day, but we still saw some strength in the stock. Now when we take a look at our chart, which is a 30-minute chart, remember when I was saying that SOFI needs to get back to $6.30? So it was able to do just that, and also treated it as an area of support on the day. So we ended up seeing a high at $6.60, and we wanted to see SOFI get up to $6.76. So knowing that it did sell off quite a bit and it closed at $6.35, you definitely want to keep this on watch. You want to see if it can bounce off of this $6.30 level and be able to make that move back to $6.60, and then see if it can get to $6.76. If it decides to show some weakness now, then I would not be surprised if we see a pullback coming down to this 200 EMA at around $6.07. So please add that to your homework, especially if we end up breaking through $6.20. But overall, just by taking a look at the chart, SOFI looks like it's on a healthy uptrend. Let's see if this can continue. But if we have weakness inside of these markets, that's where I can see some more selling pressure coming. So we're going to take a look at the recent institutional ownership and short interest information for SOFI. So scrolling down on the page, green rows indicate new positions while red rows indicate closed positions. So when we take a look at the recent filings, we have Connective Portfolio Management LLC that purchased 50,000 shares. We also have Baldwin Brothers Inc. that purchased 2,706 shares, Harbor Investment Advisory LLC that purchased 23,612 shares, and those are the filings that we have for the 18th. Now when we take a look at the short interest, the off-exchange short volume ratio is at 31.35%, and then for the off-exchange short volume, it is just over 2.95 million shares. Scrolling down on the page, the short shares availability is at 6.8 million, updated 12 minutes ago, and then for the short ball fee rate, it is at 1.71%. When we take a look at the history of the short volume, we can see for the close of the 14th, it is at 39.99, and then for the close of the 15th, it is at 31.35. So that is a significant difference right there. And then when we take a look at the short interest percentage of the float being at 17.85%, SOFI does continue to have short squeeze potential. So we're going to take a look at the chart for Netflix. Let's see how it performed on the day. So it ended up closing at $190.92, being up 0.96%. On the low, it tested $189.80, and then on the high, testing $199.67. When we take a look at the volume stats on the day, you can can see we traded at 16.275 million shares, and the average volume over 10 trading days is at 9.083 million shares. So we had above average volume, and we also saw some strength in the stock. Now, when we take a look at our chart, which is the 30-minute chart, I want you guys to pay attention to some key levels here. So we ended up seeing resistance in the past right here on June the 8th, right at 207, and we also saw it happening again right here on June the 3rd. Add that to your notes, 207.40. And then taking a look at the next area of resistance, it's right here at 199, or we could just chalk that up as 200. So the fact that it was able to close at 190, and knowing that they do have earnings coming into tomorrow, can they bounce off of this 190 level and try to get a close to 200? Hey, there's a possibility that could happen. But if it doesn't happen, and if it decides to have a sell-off, then of course I could see Netflix probably wanting to come down here to around 185, and also potentially right here at 182.75, which is where we have the 200 EMA. As far as earnings is concerned, if they end up having a disappointment, I could see the stock pulling back, going to 165.90 and even further below that. And as far as they end up doing a surprise, or we end up having a beat, I'd want to see Netflix actually being able to get to at least this 207 area, and then seeing what it could do from there. And let's quickly actually take a look at the daily chart, because I want to show you guys what happened on the previous earnings. So when I was actually looking at the chart, I was wondering, I'm like, where's the rest of it, right? But then I realized they had a strong sell-off from their previous earnings, right? Netflix was trading in the $300 range, and then it sold off, coming all the way down to the $100 range. But aside from that, just by taking a look at this chart, you can see where I marked right here at 207. So if it was going to break above this level, then there's a potential chance it can go to 226 and so forth. But in my personal opinion, I'm just not seeing it. So we're just going to have to wait to see what happens in Netflix tomorrow after hours when they release their earnings. So we're going to take a look at the recent institutional ownership and short interest information for Netflix. So scrolling down on the page, green rows indicate new positions, while red rows indicate closed positions. So we can see there's a good amount of closed positions. Well, we have Navidator Wealth LLC that purchased 3,192 shares, and we have Townsend Associates Inc. that purchased 10,144 shares. We have Equitech Proprietary Markets LLC that purchased 16,000 shares, and we have Xsane Asset Management back on the 15th that purchased 47,402 shares. So we do see a good amount of closed positions, but institutions continue to load up. Now, when we take a look at the short interest, the off-exchange short volume ratio is at 62.85%, and then for the off-exchange short volume, it is just over 5.045 million shares. Scrolling down on the page, the short shares availability is at 10 million, updated 4 minutes ago, and then for the short borrow fee rate, it is at 0.25%. When we take a look at the history of the short volume, we can see for the close of the 14th, it was at 62.85, and then for the close of the 15th, being at 62.85. So we could see, just taking a look at the short interest percentage of the float, is at 2.86%. So Netflix doesn't have short squeeze potential. So for my final thoughts for each of these stocks, first let's start off with Netflix. They do have earnings that's coming out tomorrow in the after hours. So they already sent out a warning to investors that they may have a loss of 2 million subscribers for Q2. Will this have an impact on their overall profit? Of course it will. But we also can't forget that it does trade at a PE of 18. So even if they end up disappointing, or if they come below expectations, I'm not seeing a massive drop like we have seen in the past. It did have some lows around 165 or in the 160 range. So if it wants to break below that, again, I don't see it going any lower than, let's say, around 150 or maybe 140 at the most. As far as for the upside is concerned, it did have some recent resistance right at the $200 level, and knowing today that it was able to close around $190.92, so let's just call it $191, does set itself up to look very interesting going into tomorrow as well. That's why I said going to that $200 range is very possible if they end up putting out a surprise. But in my personal opinion, I'm not expecting a lot, but I do want to see what Netflix is doing in regards to improving their overall bottom line, and then seeing what they can do next in regards to boosting that subscriber growth for the future. And now when we go over Lucid, we know that $20 is a psychological area, and it was great to see see that it was able to get to $21. It did sell off, but we have to understand the stock does continue to be on a strong uptrend. I pointed that out on the chart, and I want to see a continuation of this for this week. The only time I could see it starting looking very weak, unless we have price action where we start falling below 1750. And of course, considering where we're trading at right now, we should be able to make another move to that $20 level and then see what we can do from there. Like I said, the short-term price target, I want to see it trading at $22.50. And then as far as for SOFI is concerned, definitely a great day. We had that news in regards to the mixed offering, which was around $1 billion. So there are a lot of investors who are concerned about that. But with the resurgence that we saw today and with the market picking up, SOFI ended up seeing highs around $6.60. And the best part about it is, I talked about in my previous video, that it needs to get to $6.30. And it was able to use $6.31 as support overall on the day. So if it can continue to hold $6.30 going into tomorrow, that's where I say things can get interesting. But if it decides to fall below $6, that's where we start seeing a lot of weakness. And then as far as for POLESTAR, we ended up testing support right at $9.53. We pointed out this level as well, and I wasn't surprised that we had bulls stepping in wanting to buy up the dip. But what we want to see going into tomorrow, can POLESTAR go back to $10? It ended up seeing a high at $10.50. You know what we were looking for. We wanted price action above $10.62 because that's where we could potentially get a move going to $11. And I know many people want to keep an eye on that level. Of course, the week is still young, so we got to see what the market throws at us. But I do believe that if we have some selling pressure or we have some earning disappointments from big tech companies, especially since we do have Netflix for this week and as well as for Tesla. So I'm going to be looking forward for both of these companies to put up some solid numbers so this earnings week can bring some momentum into the market. If they do not do this, that's where I can start seeing some selling pressure, and you want to make sure that you are prepared for that. That's why I give you guys the levels to the downside and as well as for the upside, so you can handle whatever the market decides to throw at you. And another point that I want to bring up was the price action that we saw in the overall market today. So you could see as far as for the pre-market, we had a big strong run up. Early parts of the day, the market was showing a lot of strength. And then towards the end, we ended up having a lot of selling pressure. A lot of people were saying, well, you know what? The market is crashing. But we have to be aware, and taking the SPY into consideration, ended up testing support right at 380, and then it had a strong bounce to get back up to 382. That is a very good sign because that shows us that there's a lot of bulls at 380 buying the SPY up. And we want to see going into tomorrow, if we decide to test 380 again, are they going to show up? If they do not show up, that's where I could see SPY falling below 380 and possibly getting down to 376. It also does have a gap to fill around 379, and it is fairly close to that right now. So keep an eye on those levels, especially if you're going to be trading off of it. And then as far as for the stocks that I talked about, and if you are an investor, hey, the short-term price action should not bother you whatsoever. It's just a part of the game. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be talking to you guys real soon.